Nice.
Yes. Quite soft.
Good morning, everyone. These are so low, we'll be here for the rest of the day. We live here now. I'm Jenna Ben-Yehuda. I'm Executive Vice President of the Atlantic Council. Welcome to a really important conversation on building understanding for the challenges ahead. Of course, we know this is the Defense Summit, the 5% summit. We're on the precipice of that agreement, but that's not the hard part. The hard part is now when each of you as parliamentarians return to your home countries to continue to make the case for why this is necessary. We couldn't have a better set of parliamentarians here to engage with us this morning. And so I'm delighted to be joined together with Marcos Perestrello, who's president of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly and vice president of the Assembly of Portugal. Welcome, Marcos.
Thank you.
Natalia Pouzyreff, the deputy of the French National Assembly. Welcome, Natalia. And Ágnes, Vadai, the Vice President of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly and a member of the National Assembly of Hungary. Welcome. Last but not least, Tomáš Valášek, who is a member of the Slovak National Council. Welcome, Tomáš. And with that, let's get into it. Mr. President, I want to start with you. As president of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly, you have a unique role at this summit and in the weeks and months ahead. We're going to ask each of you the same question. We'll move quickly and then we'll move into a broader discussion. And get your questions ready because we will be coming to you for Q&A. But let me start with you and we'll ask each of you to respond. What does success look like? Give me your quick thoughts as president. We'll move on down.
Well, I would say that success, well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for such a relevant assistance on this meeting, and thank you for the invitation to be here in the name of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly. I see many members of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly. I see former members of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly. We are very happy to be here. What success looks like on a summit like this one? We've been in Dayton in last May, and we approved a clear resolution of what we think that should happen in the summit. First, the recognition that there is a serious threat to our security posed both by Russia and by terrorism. Second, we also need to acknowledge that there is a threat over our democratic institutions that also needs to be tackled. And third, we need to continue to support Ukraine on its fight against Russia as part of the resistance of the aggression, of the threats posed by Russia, not only to the Ukraine, but to the safety of European security and transatlantic security. For that, we need to spend more, we need to agree on the need to spend more. We need to allocate capacities also to the hybrid threats to our democratic institutions, and we need to keep on supporting on Ukraine. For that, we need public opinion, and I think you would like to speak about it.
Yes, we're going to get into that because I think there's a tall task ahead. Ágnes, what do you make of this? What does success look like for you?
Well, good morning, and first of all, thank you for inviting me to this panel. Well, I believe more unity, more seriousness, and more respect for the citizens who are going to pay that 5%. Because heads of states and governments seem to forget sometimes that it's not them or parliamentarians who are paying, but the taxpayers. So I think there are mores, and also I think less things are also needed, like less bragging, less flattering, and probably less social media leaking.
Okay.
And that would help.
I'm going to press you on this. What does respect look like? What do you want to take back to the Hungarian people from this moment?
Well, 68% of the Hungarians are supporting NATO. It's very, very important. It's very high. It has been increasing. Respecting that they are the ones who are working for that 5%, And of course, other countries' citizens, the teachers, those who work in factories. So let's not forget that while we are speaking about nice words like defense and deterrence, behind this, there are people, or citizens, and we are the ones, members of parliament, who are meeting these people every day. Some of the stakeholders, some of the decision makers are always surrounded by, bodyguards and,
Right.
in closed circles like this. So they meet people lesser, or they don't have rarely. We meet them on the streets. I meet people, Hungarian people on the street, and I want to show them, want to explain them that, listen, we are going to spend in the next decade more money on defense, and this is for you, and we take your security, your personal security, very serious, especially because Russia means a threat to Europe, means a threat to every single citizen in Europe.
So I'm hearing from you, Ágnes, straight talk.
Yeah.
Being honest, being open,
Yes.
a lot of listening. This is what this moment will require.
I'm going to be stopped on the street or when I go shopping.
Sure.
They stop me and they are asking me, what is this? And then we need straight and very normal words. So people understand why we are spending more on technology, why we are spending more on troops, why we are spending more on bigger systems, and why is this whole Hague Summit is together.
Right. I'm going to come back to you on that. Natalia, what does success look like for you as you head back to France?
First of all, thank you for inviting me. I think a positive outcome is really that it's a demonstration of the Allies' unity and determination to support Ukraine on the long run, and the determination to preserve our values, to demonstrate that we can defend and protect those values of democracies. Of course, it seems to be big words, but the Ukrainians, they know why they are fighting about. They demonstrate immense moral courage. I've met some young Ukrainians recently, and I was very impressed by the maturity they got out from the war and their moral strength. And this is something I want to convey to our public, to say that Russia is a threat. It's here, and President Macron said it. It's affecting all of us. So we should be prepared.
Thank you, Natalia. Tomáš, same question for you.
The short version?
Let's start with the short version. Well, let's see where this takes us.
The short version of success is we kept America in, we kept Russia down, and we got Europe and Germany in particular up to speed on defense. If that's the headline this afternoon, I'll be flying home with a smile on my face.
Okay, so let's take that and run with it. Marcos, back to you. You're coming here as president of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly, coming from the National Assembly of Portugal. Portugal is about 1.5% of GDP. You're coming back with 5%. That's a huge increase for your country. You are, on the one hand, a voice of NATO in Portugal and also a voice of Portugal to NATO. How do you, a voice, one of many, perhaps, but you are undoubtedly in a leadership role in driving this conversation. How do you bring this message to the Portuguese people about the imperative when that spending has not been there historically?
Yes. Well, I would say, I don't know if you heard, you were here on the previous panel where the present Minister of Defense from Belgium and the former Vice President of the NATO PA, Theo Franken, participated. And I liked very much to hear him because he was very clear on what we need to spend the money. And Ágnes just put it exactly like it is. We need transparency on the talk about the needs on defense. We cannot be endlessing, we cannot continue talking about 5%, 2%, 3.5 billions, trillions, because no one knows what is a billion. I don't know what is a billion. I never saw one, and I think, and I think I will never see one at the end of my days. But nobody knows what's a billion.
Right. Nobody knows what's
2% of GDP. Nobody knows what's 5% of GDP. We need to explain people exactly what we need. People see every day on TV, on social media, the threats. They see the missiles falling down on cities. They see the missiles throwing down buildings. They see the attack on civilian neighborhoods. It's not very hard to explain how do we need air defense to keep us safe. But we need to be transparent, and we need to have the courage to say that to people, not continuously talking about abstract things. Because when you're talking to people about percentage of GDP, about billions or trillions, you're talking about an abstract thing. So they just don't know. And people will say, well, if they are taking those billions to defense, they will take those billions from healthcare or from social security or from education. So you need to be able to explain that you will have no healthcare, no education, no social security if you have no security. And you need to show exactly how that security is in threat. You need to demonstrate them.
I hear you.
What were the two major events that caused huge disruptions in our societies in the last 5 years? The pandemic first, and the war in Russia next.
I hear you that there obviously is a forcing function on the broader, we have a land war again in Europe, that this captures everyone's attention clearly while we're all here having this conversation. But while missiles are falling, they're not falling in Porto, they're not falling in Lisboa. How do you bring that home, and what does it look like for your national budget?
They are not falling for now, but the price is raised. But because of the missiles that are falling on Ukraine.
Sure. How do you do that in the time being, in the short run?
And fuel is raising this week because of the missiles that are falling in Iran and Israel. So people feel for at least 2 and 3, 4, 5 years on their pockets the direct effects of those threats. And we politicians, not only parliamentarians, mainly governments, because governments are the ones that are more loudly that express more loudly and that are daily heard on social media and on TV, but also parliamentarians. We need to speak clearly, with transparency, with truth and courage to the people. The threat is not abstract. It's a concrete threat, and we can see it every day on TV, newspapers, and social media. We need to have the courage to face it.
So I hear this call for plain language. I think that's something on which we all agree. Tomáš, I want to turn to you. You are in a position in which the leadership of your own government does not see Russia as a threat. You are here as a representative of the National Council supporting this defense increase. How do you reconcile that reality, and how do you make the case to the Slovak people about the nature of the threat when the leadership does not see it that way?
It helps enormously, Jenna, that unlike the government, the population is very clear-headed. It supports continued membership in the West, or whatever you describe it. About 60% consistently in the polls. Support for NATO is super high, 70%. So the message wherever I go, the message that I bring with me is, irrespective of which government is in power in Bratislava at the moment, the population is clearly determined to be a part of the West. This has been one of the very consistent leitmotifs in the polling over the past few decades. And please do take that under consideration as you think about Slovakia's future and a place in the EU and in NATO. But you're right. I mean, in the short term, the government's own perspective and take on Russia makes it far more complicated to make the case for 5%. The message, the pitch you make has to be internally consistent. If you deny that Russia is a threat, even if you simply run the sort of cajoling populist politics that tells people that they can feel safe, there's nothing out there, nothing risky, nothing terribly dangerous happening to them. We're here, we're taking care of things. Don't worry. If that's your brand of politics, you're going to have a really hard time making the case for 5%, because inevitably people are going to ask, wait, what's the 5% for?
Right.
Who are we defending against? And if you can't say Russia, then who is it? The Martians? So if you're not internally consistent, if you have made the mistake at the very beginning of not articulating what is it that you're looking at, the threats from Russia and elsewhere, then you're obviously going to have a really difficult time on the other end, explaining 5%. What I find in the debate in Slovakia super helpful is pointing out that we're not dealing here with hypotheticals when it comes to Russia. I mean, we have the reality of the Vladimir Putin government essentially sending us an ultimatum already in December 2021. This came in the form of the draft treaty between the North Atlantic Treaty Organization and the Russian Federation. Some of you will have seen the text. And within the treaty, there was a clause that essentially said that all of those countries had joined after 1997, so that includes incidentally 2 countries that are represented on a panel here, should not have the right to decide to host forces and troops from other NATO countries without a droit de regard and approval from Moscow itself. So essentially, that would relegate us to the role of a second-class citizen within NATO. So when we discuss Russia's roles and intentions, and when you deal with the optimism bias, the reality that people don't want to believe that things are as bad as they really are, because bad things only happen to other people, it helps to have a handy argument in hand. And the argument we make is, again, this isn't just the case that Russia has one of the largest armies and currently spends probably more on purchasing power parity basis on defense than all of our countries together. It is also the case that Vladimir Putin is already making demands on parts of Europe. This is not a hypothetical. There is a real ask. And as somebody smarter than I said on this panel yesterday, when Russia makes a threat, it has a tendency to carry it out. So we are well advised to take their threats seriously. That's the explanation. That's the pitch we made.
So I'm hearing you say that memory is powerful. That history is really powerful.
It is.
And it brings you closer to the current moment, and that despite the messaging from the current government, that you feel that these numbers are holding, support for NATO remains strong, and that consistent messaging is going to be really key. Ágnes, I want to come back to you. What is the mood in Budapest right now? Can you talk a little bit about some of the dynamics, and how do you tell this story to your people, and how are folks thinking about this moment?
Well, there is a heat wave, 40 degrees centigrade in Budapest right now, so you can imagine it's quite hot. The situation is not easy. You know, in Hungary, you all know what's going on, I'm sure, because you have heard a lot about Hungary and the Hungarian government. But there is one thing that is quite clear. Our history and our attitude towards Russia, Soviet Union, Russian Empire is quite clear. They suppressed 2 of our revolution, 1848 and 1956. They executed our prime minister of 1956. We had 40 years of Soviet troops in Hungarian territory. So the older generation is quite, they quite know what it means when the Russians are on your soil. And when it comes to younger generation, and we have to talk about the younger generation as well, they like the European lifestyle, you know? They like to travel freely. They like using internet freely, TikTok, and all these things. All they've ever known. Like everybody, all they ever know. And they don't want to have the Russian style of lifestyle. So that's why I think there is no single one path for, there is no common path for all countries. There's one single path for each country, how to explain why to spend more on defense and deterrence. And here, history is one thing, and that's when, if you compare like Slovakia, Hungary, and like former communist regime, you can count on the past, telling what it means when you have Soviet troops and you know, Russian troops and suppression there. And for the younger generation who have only known democracy, have only experienced, you know, Schengen, free traveling and freedom, you can tell that compared to what we have right now and what can happen if you're not defending this lifestyle, your lifestyle, not just the country. I think it's very important when you talk to the people, you translate it to their everyday activity and tell them, when we are talking about spending more, we are not just talking about armored vehicles and troops in an air defense system. We are talking about defending the lifestyle we have been living and what we want to preserve.
And what I'm also hearing you say, Ágnes, and I think this is so important, is that history clearly plays a role in the consciousness of a country, but it's also generational. And so the messaging to different generations has
important.
to be nuanced and reflect those,
exactly.
those realities.
You have to be sophisticated. I know if you think of politicians, sophistication is not always coming into your mind, but I think...
Except for all of you. You're very sophisticated.
Well, those who are present, there are always exceptions, of course, especially in the audience. But, you know, and speaking sophisticated requires, you know, knowledge. Knowledge of your people, knowledge of the generations, and understanding the generations as well. And, and probably you need more vocabulary for that as well.
Fair, fair. Natalia, I want to come to you. Give me your take on this. What does the youth vote look like in France right now? Are there generational divides on this question? We've seen strong leadership, strong rhetoric about the importance of support for NATO in this way. But what does it look like if you peel back the onion, as we say, and look across the French populace?
It's very difficult to generalize about, you know, one generation. So we have to, understand each of their challenges, the challenges they are facing. They are very much, you know, into the climate change, and we have to understand that. But they are looking away for their future, so we have to guide them, provide some guidance. So I think on the one way, we have to make sure we can give them some keys to have this confidence, trust in the future, but they have to step up as well for the nation, give them a bit of moral strength, if I may say so, and then give them a positive view of, you know, spending more for defense. It's not only about, sending troops on the ground, it's also investing in technology for the future. It could provide really positive outcomes for the employment in the industry. It could, preserve our lifestyle and quality of life. And by the end of the day, it's about our sovereignty. And we have to make them clear that their future will be impacted if we don't make the right decision right now. It's about freedom in the future. It's about not repeating the same mistakes, you know, on the eve of World War II. We didn't fight for Danzig, and we have seen the result of the von Ribbentrop and Molotov Pact. It affected the whole Europe. Of course, in Central Europe, they know better than we do, but in France, we were occupied for a long period of time as well. So we have to guide them through this path, through history, and the positive choices we have to make that can give them positive outcome for their futures. And investing in new technology will be anyway beneficial not only to the armament industry, but also will maybe give key for, you know, stability, prosperity, and through prosperity we can fuel the fight against climate change, you know, and so and so and so. We have to engage them. Really, we have to open the doors, we have to set up some, I would say, public forums. We have to go from parliamentarian diplomacy to public diplomacy. We have to act, organize, such forums, cyber tests involving the new generation. In France, we have been very much impacted by hybrid attacks. Russia used some proxies to divide the French society after the 7th of October. We had these David stars painted on some buildings of Paris. We had degradation on the Shoah Memorial.
Right.
The proxies were sent by Russia just to divide the French population about the issue in the Middle East. So it's very tricky. And now that's the part of the government and the parliament to make the French people audience aware of the manipulation of information, and the French people are very much in demand about debunking all that. And we know we are under attack, daily attacks by the Russian on that, and we have demonstrated it, and now it's getting more public, and even the secret services can sometimes open their, their information to make public more aware of the real situation and what we have to face and be prepared for.
So I'm really glad you brought that up, Natalia. Thanks for the segue. We have talked a little bit about what does success look like. We've talked about the nature of the debate and the importance for clear, direct language, and that it can differ generationally. I want to get to the point that you just made. What does it actually look like to operationalize that conversation? How do you get out to publics and think about broadening fora, discussion bases? You've got a tall task ahead of you in keeping these lines of communication open, especially as you note, while bombs might not be falling, thank goodness, in your countries, you were subject to gray zone attacks all the time, whether undersea cable ruptures or cyber incursions, these kinds of disinformation campaigns. How do you think in each of your respective countries about what does it take, what does it really look like to have these conversations in earnest? Marcos?
Well, that's a very good question. I would say that it's important to bear in mind the historic memory. But historic memory needs to be refreshed because young people don't have historic memory. They are taught to gain that historic memory. So it needs to be refreshed. And one important step is for us to remind everybody of our achievements as an alliance. The achievements this alliance had in these 76 years of life that assured in the entire Euro-Atlantic area, peace and prosperity for everybody, and assured a democratic way of life during 76 years. That's the long memory. But I believe it's also important to remind a shorter memory that sometimes it's forgotten. In 2014, all the allies get together in the Wales and agreed on spending up defense spending to 2%. When you hear some leaders of countries of the alliance, it seems that that commitment was a failure. But that commitment was not a failure. That commitment was achieved in 2024, which was the date agreed, the year agreed to be fulfilled by 23 of the 32 members. 2/3 of the alliance members achieved that commitment. That was a huge achievement of the alliance. And the 9 that didn't achieve that goal of 2% in 2024 are now committed to achieve it in 25. So this was a big recent achievement of the alliance that can give us trust for the successes of the alliance to continue. On the other hand, there's also what seems to be some suspicions on the part of the alliance regarding the American commitment to the alliance. But if you look at the American administration posture on the last 5-6 months, you can see some new approaches on political relations with other countries, some of which are friends and allies. You can see a change on the approach on trade with the tariffs policy, but you also can see a consistent approach on the will to strengthen the alliance, to make the alliance stronger, and demanding for European partners and from Canada a bigger commitment with the alliance. And I think we will agree on that.
So you think this is part of how you talk to people. I wonder, though, operationally, I mean, we've seen Baltic states for some time have readiness campaigns. They have curriculum in the high schools in Sweden that they're rolling out to talk about what it looks like to be ready. I mean, really communicating the threat in a structured way. How are your governments thinking about that? Or what is required that's not happening, Ágnes?
Well, I think speaking the Hungarian government, I'm a member of the Hungarian government, but if we were in Ghana, I would definitely make it very clear to the population, Hungarian population, who is a partner and who is an adversary. Because in many cases, people, and not just in Hungary, but all over the alliance, sometimes are not clear what governments are following. Let's make it clear. Russia is the adversary. There is no question on that. And they have been adversary not actually since the very attack on Ukraine. They have been adversaries since 2014, since taking the Crimea. And that was a huge mistake, that we were not preparing our population, that Russia, and not Russian people as a whole, the Russian political leadership cannot be trusted. I would also ask our Western partners to look at our history of Central and Eastern Europe, and take our experience we have with the Russians. I mean, Natalia was talking about what happened to France in the Second World War. Well, after the Second World War, if I remember correctly, from my historical studies, Europe was divided into two, and for some reason, my country got on the wrong side of the continent, and I don't want this division anymore. We are a member of EU and NATO, and we also should remind our societies through teaching, through speaking to people, that NATO is not only a defense and the most successful defense alliance in the history of the world, but it's an organization that is securing our everyday stability. And it's very, very important. So I think we should be very proud in Europe, and I want to tell it to all our European colleagues, what Europe has been doing in the past decade. Yeah, some countries were not spending that much, but some were really spending a lot of money. And we are not going to spend more because somebody in any country is telling us to spend more, but because Russia is on our doorstep. And we understand these challenges. So, sorry, but in Europe, we are not like lazy, stupid politicians. Some might think that. We understand the challenges, and we are going to spend more and smart, and we are going to increase our capabilities, because our ultimate goal is to defend our people. We are elected by our citizens. We are responsible for our citizens. And we are not going to do that because someone is telling us in an office. We are doing that because our people, for me, of course, first of all, the country I love the most and where I come from, the Hungarian people, are most important, but it's also important what's happening in Portugal, because we are friends, we are in the same alliance in NATO and also in EU. So there is common sense. And I think this is what we should also tell our people, that this is spending more on protection is common sense for the future, for the future generations, and for, as I mentioned, the way of life we are living. And it requires sacrifices from our people, yes, but with investing into defense industry, it can also create quality jobs for the future generation.
So, Ágnes, I want to come in here, excuse me, but I want to make sure we get to our audience, so get your questions ready. They'd better be hot ones. And a question ends in a question mark. So let's be tight on our questions here. But Natalia first, and Tomáš, quick thoughts from you. Spending is one thing. Spending to achieve capability, to achieve outcomes, is quite another. I say as an American, it's easy to spend a lot of money on defense and not always get capability. So how do you continue to make these arguments to your people, especially on defense spending? Natalia, a lot of strong French defense industry capability. This could be an important moment for France. Tell me a little bit about how you're thinking about the structured nature of defense spending and how to increase that accountability as you continue to talk to people.
Yes, it's not only about spending money, you have to spend it wisely. And anyway, we won't avoid a strong debate in France when the budget comes in, that we are going to decrease some spending in some social welfare maybe, and maintain and even increase the defense spending. It's going to be a hot domestic debate.
Tough cycle.
For sure. But we see, for instance, it's a detail maybe, but we managed to get people interested, young and not so young, and experts and specialists interested in joining the reservist team, you know? So it means there's a move for people, you know, to want to be active, proactive in defending the country.
Tomáš, let me just come to you if I may. What does it look like within Slovakia to try to get this transparency and accountability? How are you thinking about what those dollars look like and as you move into your budget cycles?
It's probably a bit harder than in case of France, Germany, or other countries with a substantial defense industry, because you cannot make the jobs argument. The money just doesn't translate into jobs the way that it does in the United States or France, the countries of Rheinmetalls and EADS and MBDA. You can make the case, which we do, based on simply national pride and sense of decency, which is, look, if your armed forces feature trucks and armored personnel carriers that are not only older than the soldiers who drive them, but older than the generals who command the soldiers who drive the APCs, clearly that's wrong, and that's a situation that needs to be fixed. And the other way you fix it is through the old offset argument. Offset is a jargon, but essentially the point I'm making is you fix it, you address the unpopularity by making sure some of the jobs do stay at home.
Right.
So when I was a think tanker writing papers about defense collaboration in Europe, I used to be a big opponent of offsets because they really deform the defense market. As a politician, I've become a huge fan of offsets because at the end of the day, it's really, really, really hard to make the case for spending $250 million
People see it, they feel it.
if you leave none of the jobs, if it generates no jobs at home.
Yeah, you feel it at your kitchen table.
If it's in impoverished parts of the country, you can actually go there, you can have a chat with the people, you can, as a politician, take the pictures there and explain, this is for you. I respect this isn't the fastest way to get the economy up and running. There are better investments to get the economy up and running, but I have not only invested in my own defense, I have not only made the country safer, I have actually created jobs in a country, in a part of the country that needed it the most.
Yes. Okay, over to our audience right here in the front row. Please give us your name. And do we have a microphone coming? Wait just a moment. She's right here in the front. You can do it.
Lots of obstacles.
Thank you so much. My name is Mariam. I am from Germany, representing Youth Atlantic Treaty Association. We have here many of our members of our national chapters of YATA. We are dedicated to strengthen transatlantic values and support NATO. But on the other hand, we have a huge number of young people who don't really support this kind of values, who feel disappointed from politicians and politics. And there are many surveys, they show that young people are much more vulnerable for disinformation, for example, as the other parts of our generations and society. So what do you think, how we could reach out to young people in Europe and transatlantic? Thank you.
Yeah, Natalia, do you want to take that?
Yeah, definitely. Our Ministry of Defense is organizing war games and challenges about, you know, all the disruption we can get in our society, and this has a lot of success. And they are aiming at gamers, you know, the people, the young generation spending time, and they have specific targets. You need to have specific targets when you are talking about the youth. Then what we aim at is developing an academy between Viginum, that is our agency for debunking and showing there has been manipulation of algorithm. It's not about the Ministry of Truth, really. It's about showing the manipulation of, displaying how the information can be manipulated and how the young ones can develop their critical sense. And this academy should join this technical curriculum, we should develop it jointly with the Education Ministry, okay? Then it's not only about the young ones, I can tell you. The older people are very subjected to disinformation as well. And this is why I support personally initiatives such as the ones of Reporters Sans Frontières, Reporter Without Borders, the JTI, that is an attempt to label how to say, confident, trustable
media.
Trustable medias. This is very important. So we have to challenge all the categories of population, definitely. And still we have to, as politicians, regain trust, build trust. NATO went from a political alliance to an operational organization, but it will be all the more robust if it gets the public support.
Okay, I think we have time for one quick question. If you've got a tight one over here, I see a young woman right here. Can we get her a mic, please? One question with one part.
Thank you. I'm Emma van Nieuwhuizen. I'm the Dutch UN Youth Representative on Human Rights and Security. And I love the question you just asked. Thank you for that. But I also feel like maybe we should get it more to this room. For example, in the last panel discussion we had about intergenerational security and leadership, where there was a lovely moderator whose input wasn't really heard. So I feel like we have been talking a lot about security and what that means for our younger generations without really talking with them.
Yeah.
We're talking about them.
So that's not a question, but Emma's making a play for including young voices.
It's a good point, anyway.
And it's an important point. We are almost out of time. I want to turn to you quickly for final comments. Tomáš.
Really quickly, the youth vote is an interesting example of how all politics is local. I represent a very young party. At 53, I'm the third oldest of the 33 MPs in the parliament, and yet we have one of the largest levels of support among our party voters for the defense, defending the country with weapons in hand if necessary. Why do I think that's the case? My last point, personal examples, seeing people in Ukraine, young, hip, just as any other young, hip Slovaks who vote for us, defending their country with arms in hand, standing upwards, helped enormously. It shook people out of their sense of complacency. It infused them with a sense of patriotism. Fighting for your country is not just the right and a decent thing to do. It's something that people like me do, even if I'm only 19 or 20. And the personal example, seeing somebody, in some cases, friends of theirs, fighting for the country has actually made enormous difference.
I think that's a good place to end, Tomáš, with apologies to others. We're running out of time, but we've heard a call for transparency and accountability, using plain language, getting out of NATO jargon, and speaking directly with people. Emma makes the good point of ensuring that youth have a vote and are at the table. There's a lot of work to do, and best of luck as you head back to your capitals.
Thank you.
Thank you.